brewery sector analysts' reports suggest players in the sector, namely Nigerian breweries and international breweries, have raised prices, with the increases mainly on selected brands packaged in aluminum cans. For Nigerian breweries, the only price increase implemented on the returnable glass bottle range was on Star Lager brand in the 600 milliliter brand. Now, with both breweries introducing price increases, mainly on aluminum can brands, it suggests that the pricing of aluminum can purchase contracts from either BevCan or GZI have likely been revised in recent months. So, joining us to discuss this is Olamide Adeboboye from ARM Securities, an analyst from ARM Securities. Good morning to you, Olamide. Thanks for joining us. Want to get to breweries, but before we do, what's your take on this latest climb we've seen with inflation figures?
Well, I mean, it was expected. It's what you would ordinarily see already. We've seen the trend in the last few months. Different things have happened. Your FX, the recent devaluation that happened. This is like the second one we're having this year already. We could go on PMS price increase, your electricity price, all of it have basically just fed into the higher prices we've seen. Food prices have skyrocketed. You know, if you go into the market today, you see food prices are going really high. So definitely it was highly expected. The inflationary trend will most likely continue into next year. I think, but the good thing is going into next year, but from 2021, from the second half of 2021, most of these shocks, I think the only shock we expect in 2021 is maybe a further FX. That's the only concern we have if there's going to be another devaluation in 2021. But some of these pressures should start to ease from the second half. But this uptrend will most likely continue to the first half of next year.
Thanks. So, okay, well, you've preempted my next question then. So that means through the Yuletide period, because we've seen, I guess, demand rising for a number of things. Like, for example, airline tickets, domestic airfare jumped by about 100% or so. A lot of Nigerians, we had a special report on that. So with that increased demand, I guess you already said it, that you're guessing that that's going to continue through this period.
Yes, it is going to continue all through this month. I mean, we're already in December. Typically, you always find, that increased demand, which would artificially increase prices. So even without those shocks that have been on in the last few months, you will see this other things, this typical December effect, also coming in terms of prices. So your increased demand will drive prices up. The other supply shocks that you've had in the last few months would also, drive an increase in inflation this month into the next year.
Olamide, since most of this was, I guess, precipitated from the border closure August of last year, we've seen the rise. Do you think it puts pressure on the government to I mean, they've said their language suggests that they want to reopen the borders soon, but does this in any way accelerate that?
Yeah, well, it might not necessarily accelerate it, the way we do things here in Nigeria. I think it might still take a while, but I mean, at best case, by the end of 2021, or not before the end of 2021, the borders will be reopened again. So I don't think the increase in inflation would be the basic fuel that would have driven, governments going on the path of reopening the borders. I think it's more of the after agreement and all of the other things that have happened in recent times. I don't think inflation is the key driver, but we expect that before the end of 2021, they would have concluded the process and all of that, and you could see the border reopened. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Now, I want to get to breweries, because during this Christmas period, it's expected that Nigerians will be buying drinks in order to celebrate. And this report that we're getting, that some of the players in the brewery sector are looking to increase prices. Does that make sense, Olamide? Are they being pressured? What's your take on what they're doing?
Well, it would ordinarily come off as it doesn't make sense in a period where consumer wallets are really depressed. A lot of people are struggling. Salaries, not necessarily like income has increased. If you check the GDP figure, even if you don't have the updated one, you will know that it's not like income has increased, across the country. But it's a very tight situation where consumer sector as a whole, we've been faced with increased cost. Aside from domestic inflation, you have the FX impact, basically affecting your cost. So somehow you need to pass on these prices to your consumer, but it's been tough, right? Q2 was a very tough period. It was very, very, very few consumer goods, consumer names were able to record, an increase in revenue. And that's just because prices were literally flat, and then you have volumes which didn't grow that much. So especially for breweries, over Q2, they saw like a double-digit decline in that space in their revenue. So though Q3 was a bit better in that they saw a recovery in volumes, better than markets actually expected, which is good for them. them. And ordinarily, you would think that increasing prices would deter, some of those consumers from taking those goods. But I think it's just them getting to that tipping point where you cannot afford to continue to bear the cost. It needs to be passed to the final consumer. In terms of what the impact would be, on their revenue figure, I think it's a welcome development, to be honest with you, because it's just something they've been delaying and would eventually happen. And I don't think it would just be breweries that would, implement this price increase. I think over the coming year, you might see, these other consumer names implement price increases because cost has really gone higher, for them, and somehow they need to break even in terms of, as much as they're considering how tight the wallets are, they also need to consider the fact that their margins are really, really tightening already. So they need to, increase price. So it's a welcome move, which we think you might see more of it, because what they've done so far hasn't even accounted for the large chunk of the cost they've had to bear in the last months or years. The increase in VAT and all of that. They've had a lot of, they did a lot of price cuts because of IB, and cost has actually increased. I think it's high time you start to see that price increase. But I think what is more important is it will be graduated. I don't think you'll see that sharp increase. You'll see that gradual, increase in prices, just to be able to, account for their cost and help their margins a bit. So yeah, I think it's a welcome development, and it's really a right thing to do.
Okay, so the economics of it makes sense from their perspective. Thanks. So what about the impact? You talked about impact on their revenues. Welcome development. What about the impact on consumers? How do you think consumers will react? And does this timing make sense? I guess I think the two particular players in this case where the prices increases took place in December. So I guess does the timing make sense since it's a Yuletide period?
Well, yes, I would say the timing makes sense. Like Nigerians, we like to celebrate a lot. So yes, you will still, as much as there's an increase, people have been, literally dying to go out relative to Q2 where they were all locked up and all. So I think what will happen this time around is relative to what you had, last year, where a little price increase will basically just deter your customers, like just, cause a significant or a sharp decline in what you would have. I think this time around, you might not see that significant reaction again, because it's a period where things are pretty, in terms of cost is really high across board. So, aside from your items, the daily needs that you have to consume, a lot of people have had to bear, increased prices at that end. So I think I would say that the kind of reaction we will see is more like it's been expected that a lot of the prices of a lot of things have already gone up already. So it's only natural that you will see it in other commodities, other goods, in terms of how they can increase their prices, because again, it's not a necessity. You might not see them increase prices sharply, but for the other names, the other goods that are termed necessary, you might see them start to take the price increase as necessary as it can be, or as soon as it can be. So I think the timing is fine, and this period is the right time because people will still go out to celebrate. It's the holidays, everyone will come out, everyone wants to experience their season. So I think it's a good time to actually take the price increase, and I think it's possible for the sector as a whole.
All right, Olamide, we've only got less than a minute, so I guess 30 seconds if you can. Do you like any stocks in the brewery sector?
Well, I would say that, so we saw a lot of sell-off, in 2020. I think that those are names you want to start looking at, NB, into next year, because you most likely, if the price increase continues, you most likely will see some interest in that space. Hopefully, foreign investors are a bit more comfortable with the FX issue. It's a lot of concern, but if they're a bit comfortable, then you would see interest in that name, because they had interest before all of the COVID, and also once the FX concerns are out of it, then you might see a bit of interest in that stock. So I'll say my top pick in that space will be Nigerian Breweries.
Right, Olamide Adeboboye, analyst at ARM Securities. Thank you so much for taking us through the brewery sector and giving your thoughts on inflation as well. Appreciate your thoughts.